Greetings, one and all. It's Super Thursdays here. For a change, we're not in the Holy Apple, we're in the Holy Land. We're in the holy city of Elon Moreh Shechem, the place where Abraham and Sarah, the first place that they came into the land of Israel. This was their first stop. Okay, today the title of our class is Israel at War, Simchat Torah War, question mark, or War Against Torah, gloves off. At the beginning, we will all join together in prayer for all those that are injured, those that are injured physically, those that are injured emotionally. All of us are injured emotionally, that's for sure. And though we might be okay physically, we weren't involved, but all of us, of course, are injured emotionally and very saddened by the events of the last Shabbat. Okay, so we say, Achenu kol Beit Yisrael, hanetunim batzara ubashivya, omdim ben bayam uben bayabasha, hamakom yarachem alehem, v'yotzihem mitzara lirvacha, umeafela leora, shiabud ligula, shta, bagala v'zman kariv, v'nomar amen. All our brothers, wherever they might be in the world, wherever they're in distress, we pray for their salvation. Okay. First, I will begin with my personal experiences. I was in Jerusalem with my mom. My wife and myself were in Yerushalayim with my mom. And as always, in the middle of the night, I make the long journey from my mom's house to the old city, to the Kotel, where I pray in a sunrise prayers. And when I arrived at the first security check, I already felt like something was unusual on this past Shabbat. I always go in a certain way, not through the regular security machines, because there's a dispute amongst the Jewish law authorities whether one is allowed to rely on the way the security system is set up at the Kotel. And at other places, they put it on a Shabbat mode, which is of course different than a regular week, but there's a dispute there. So just to be on the safe side, I go a little bit off to the side. They never give me a problem. I greet them with Shabbat Shalom and ask them how they're doing, so they're able to understand already I don't have an Arabic accent, and I'm carrying maybe a book and a talit, so they're not suspicious. Anyways, this time the guard comes and he puts his hand on my chest and he says, "Wait a minute." So I waited for about a minute, and then he says, "Okay, you could go now." He said there was some kind of problem in the surroundings. So I thought already, I wonder if this is an omen for some things to come. I'm in the additional service for the Shabbat. It was also the last day of the Jewish holidays, Shmini Atzeret, Simchat Torah. And it was about 8 o'clock in the morning. Approximately my eyes were closed because I was in the middle of a prayer where either you're looking in a book, or if you know it by heart, you could say it with your eyes closed. So I was saying with my eyes closed, and all of a sudden I hear someone yelling, "Everybody inside the tunnel." Where I pray in the Kotel is it's like in a tunnel. It's not outside, what you're used to seeing the wall. It's to the left of the wall, and it's looks like a cave or a tunnel, and people go there when it rains, so not to get wet. Anyway, someone's yelling. I don't know what's happening. I'm trying to think of myself, why is this guy yelling? Everybody get in. Go to the end of the tunnel, he's yelling. So I thought to myself that maybe they're throwing rocks. Maybe the Arabs are throwing rocks from the Temple Mount onto the worshippers on the bottom of the Kotel. But it was hard for me to believe that, because just I felt, sometimes you could have a feeling, even though your eyes are closed, you could have a feeling that people are all, they're all freaking out. And it wasn't, besides for the guy yelling, who seemed like he was freaking out, no one else seemed, I didn't feel that energy of people like freaking out that they just threw rocks at them. But be that as it may. Okay, so afterwards, at about 9:15 a.m., I started heading back to my mom's house. It's about a 3-kilometer walk. And when walking on the main street called the Agron Street, there's a person. I look at him for 1 second. He's on one of these electric motor scooters. Looks to me like maybe he's 20 years old. And I look, he's going really quick. He's going about 40 kilometers an hour, so he's going pretty fast. And I was just able to catch that he's wearing tzitzit. Now don't forget, this is the Sabbath, it's also a holiday, and you're not supposed to be on those guys. So thinking to myself, wow, that's really unusual. Of course, I didn't have a chance to, I was going to tell him, like, maybe put your tzitzis in, because you're not allowed to be on those scooters on Shabbat. But once again, it was 1 second, he's already, he's already halfway to wherever he's going. So it was another unusual incident. So now I have 3 so far. I have the security guard stopping me, something that doesn't happen. I have somebody yelling to the people, get inside the tunnel, and then maybe 5 minutes later, telling everyone they can get out. And now I have somebody with their tzitzit, with their fringes on a corkenet, a motor, an electric coconut flying by. So about a block or 2 later, I hear a siren go off. I'm sure that it's like a false alarm. Something went wrong and there's a false alarm. Why? Because I'm looking around and I see people walking. I see a couple of cars, unfortunately, traveling. Nobody looks too freaked out to me. So anyways, I figured that was a false alarm. I get to my mom's house, and then I see that on the way, as I'm about to go on the steps, to approach the steps of my mom's house, I noticed that the bomb shelter door is open. All of a sudden, when I saw the bomb shelter, everything else came into place. I understand. All the pieces came into, of the puzzle came into its right place. I understood everything then. The guy with his tzitzit out, he was probably called up, and he's trying to get as fast as he can to his where his unit meets in Jerusalem somewhere. So he took that scooter. Everything came into place. That there was some type of missile attacks in Jerusalem. That I understood from there. There were about maybe 5 or 6 during the morning hours, and that was it. It was quiet afterwards. As far as where I live here in Elon Moreh, also after Shabbat, after the holiday, I called up, and there was a lot of action over here. About 150 fathers were called up into the army on Shabbat, on the holiday, and there's a professional tractor driver here. He has like a whole battalion of tractors at his disposal. That's what he does for a living. He was a friend of mine who I'm talking to on the phone after Shabbat. So he tells me that he was in a shul, and the army walks in and they call this tractor professional driver. They call him to the side and they say, "Come with us." And it turned out to be that from the from the west side of Elon Moreh. A few kilometers from here, there's an Arab village called Azmut, and there were about 200 Arabs that were trying to approach the settlement here in Elon Moreh. There's there's different dirt roads that are possible to lead up to here. So his job was to bring in dirt and make sure that at least they can get cars up here. And then of course the army took care to make sure that they would go back to their villages. So that was in the morning here on the west side of Elon Moreh. About 200 Arabs trying to approach, trying to copy the success of what happened in the south of Israel. And then in the north of Israel, there were in two different places around Elon Moreh, other groups of about 200 people, 200 Arabs, tried the same kind of idea. Now, to understand, on the north side of Elon Moreh, it's about a 600 meter climb. So you really have to, I've done it a couple of times. You really have to be in super shape to do it. So I'm not sure exactly how far they got, but they gave it a shot, and pun intended, they gave it a shot. But once again, our tractor driver dumped dirt, make sure that they can't get up here via dirt roads, and also the army took care that they would head back home. Not a very good idea to try to come into our settlement. I'll add that. Okay. So now, taking it from the top, gloves off. The timing of the battle. The timing of the battle teaches us many, many important lessons, clear messages that are being sent our way. You have to be blind not to see these messages. Number one, before I get into our first source, I'm just going to say there are many, many sources that I'm not going to bring in order to save time. Everything, I do have all the sources. If somebody in the comment section, I could send them the sources just to save time and being in an emergency situation. So I'm going to try as much as possible to cut out. Occasionally I'll say a source or two. Okay, so on a private level, there's a case in the prophet of Jonah where Jonah is escaping from God's command to tell the Jewish people to go to a non-Jewish land and warn the people that their city will be destroyed. Jonah doesn't want to do that. He goes to the port city of Jaffa near Tel Aviv, and he takes a boat out to escape from the land of Israel. And there's a gigantic storm, hurricane in the sea, and Jonah goes to sleep. In the meantime, the boat is rocking and rolling in the water, and the people on the ship come to him and said, "Listen, why are you sleeping? Get up! You have to wake up." So they give him a wake-up call, and they say, they tell him what's happening, and he turns to them. Now we have to understand these are a lot of idol worshippers. So if you want to put the blame on somebody, there's a lot of people you could definitely put the blame on. A lot of idol worshippers. He could say, "Listen, this whole storm and this emergency, dangerous situation that we've been brought into is because of the fact that you people are worshiping idols." Actually, he, so to speak, looks in the mirror and says, "This whole hurricane is because of me. It's because of me." And that's our first lesson, real lessons, is that if all the Jewish people were all affected by the news, that means that the suffering that all of us are going through, God doesn't put us through suffering if there's not a reason, if there's not some kind of repairing, a tikkun that we have to do, fix. So that's number one. We all have to really wake up, and we all have to improve ourselves. And it's kind of like it's an emergency situation. So whatever we can do, and there's a lot of things as far as charity, helping out situation here in the land of Israel, Torah, improving our adherence to the Torah and the commandments, and we'll get to, at the end, there will be a lot of practical ideas here. So please make sure that this will probably be 2 parts, but at the end there will be practical issues that we should undertake. Okay, now back to the timing of the battle. It says in Tractate of Sukkah, of course, this massacre took place on the 8th day of the holiday of Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret it's called. And if we look on page 52 of the Tractate Sukkah, we see there that it says that God regretted 4 creations that, so to speak, was forced to create. Number 1 was exile. Number 2 was the Babylonians, who destroyed the first temple and also killed hundreds of thousands of Jews. Number 3 is the evil inclination, which brings us down many times. And number 4 are the Ishmaelim. Today they're known as the Muslims. So all of a sudden, this was like maybe 2 days ago, all of a sudden I look at the page 52, and all of a sudden, like a lightning bolt, it just really hit me that Hashem sent me this idea, amazing idea. We know that there are 52 days of mercy and forgiveness that God gives us from the beginning of Elul to 52 days later, the last day being Shmini Atzeret, Simchat Torah. So this is an amazing thing. This massacre took place on the 52nd day of mercy and forgiveness, which means that here is the source of God regretting the creation of Ishmael, of the Muslims. So this was the day of the massacre, and this was the, so to speak, the last opportunity of forgiveness and mercy, which we did not merit. We did not merit. But once again, to me, that's an amazing eye-opener. Next, there's a Hasidic book from the early 1800s. It's called Me'ir Einei Chachamim, famous Rebbe, and he writes the following: from the new year, Rosh Hashanah, until the final judgment is given on Simchat Torah, there are, if we do the math, from New Year's till Hoshana Rabbah, which is another stage of closing any appeals. Yom Kippur is the day that we seal, but there's also time until Hoshana Rabbah and the morning of Simchat Torah, Shmini Atzeret, to appeal and to change, overturn the ruling. So he says an amazing idea that if you do the math, 24 hours in a day times 21, because Hoshana Rabbah, which is one stage of a closing of any type of appeal, that comes out to 504 hours. That brings us to the beginning of Shmini Atzeret, Simchat Torah, which is in our area was 6:20, probably in the south of Israel it's about 7 minutes later, so that brings us to 6:27. 12 hours later once again, beginning from sunset on Friday evening till the sunrise on Shabbat morning where the massacre occurred. If we do 12 hours, so that's 504 plus 12, it's 516. When Moses wanted to come into the land of Israel, he prayed 515 prayers. And it says we have a tradition that if he would have prayed if he would have been able to do one more prayer, God stopped him. 516, he could have changed the decree against him. So therefore, this amazing book is telling us that in order to change the decree, we have 516 hours, and then it's signed, sealed, and delivered. So that brings us to 6:27 in the morning. The first siren in the south of rockets being fired went off at 6:30. These are things that you can't make them up. The judgment was sealed. Amazing. Next, on that Shabbat morning, we read not only the end of the Torah, we also begin the Torah. And the first verse of the Torah, when we talk about the creation of the world, there's a famous Rashi, the famous commentary, who lived about 900 years ago. Rashi brings down from his father that the first verse of the Torah is coming to teach us that the land of Israel belongs to the Jewish people, which is an amazing thing, because as we're reading that this past Shabbat, all over Israel, our right to the land of Israel, we have the Muslims trying to kill us and remove us from the land of Israel, claiming, God forbid, that the land belongs to them. Big joke. So that's an amazing lesson here that God is giving to us of the land of Israel belongs to us, to the Jewish people, and unfortunately, we do not act in kind. What do I mean? That until this very minute, we have never annexed Judea, Samaria, or back 18 years ago when we had Gaza. Those areas were never annexed. We never claimed this is the land of Israel. This is part of the land of Israel till this very second. And this is a tremendous wake-up call for all of us, that during this massacre, at a time where we're reading the Jewish people, all of the land of Israel belonged to us, to the Jewish people. And out of fear of the Gentiles, out of nations, out of man, we refuse to annex these areas and claim this is ours. God gave us these areas. Also, another harsh lesson as far as the timing of this massacre is in this, the portion of the week after the holiday is always Genesis, Breshit. And therefore, we read about the first murder in the world, which was Cain against Abel. And it's amazing, our sages tell us that Cain did not know how to kill someone because it was never done. So he just chopped up. He just kept on chopping up Abel, which is an amazing thing because we're reading about babies that were chopped up, beheaded, people burnt. And that's exactly the source of murder is in the portion of the week. And we saw the greatest one day of murder, 1,300 people in one day since the Holocaust, days of Auschwitz. Next, the Yom Kippur War 50 years ago, 1973, began on the Sabbath and on the holiest day, on Yom Kippur. This Simchat Torah war began on Shabbat, the holiest day of the week, during the holiest month of the year, also 7. Sabbath is the 7th day, and the holidays are all in the 7th month. So both are days of judgment. Of course, we are all familiar with Yom Kippur. Perhaps some of us are less familiar with the putting into motion, setting into motion. The judgment only comes on the sunrise of Simchat Torah. So that is an amazing, and both caught off guard. Yom Kippur Wars 50 years ago, and now Simchat Torah, and they're both the holiest days of the year. In fact, according to many commentaries, for example, Ramah of Pano, the Khatam Sofer, they write black and white in their commentaries that the 8th day, the Simchat Torah, is holier than the day of Yom Kippur. That is an amazing thing, and they of course bring in a lot of proofs. So this is an amazing, because during both wars that came out on the 7th day, during the 7th month, one on Yom Kippur, one on Simchat Torah, this myth of the invincible, of Superman, Israel army was shattered to pieces. So that's an amazing wake-up call in itself. Not only that, on these 2 days, Yom Kippur 50 years ago and this past Shabbat on the holiday, these are times where the Jewish people have just gone through 52 days of cleanliness, of purity. We are like angels. We are like angels on this day. So understand how grave the situation is. This happened. God let this happen at a time where the Jewish people are at their heights, at their best. They're the Holy of Holies. That's amazing. That's frightening. You know, like this is the best. This is the best we could get. And it just wasn't good enough. Comes to teach us, dear friends, that we have a golden rule, a principle in Judaism. That rule is that when God gives us opportunities to reach the heights, to have redemption, to have the greatest of times, if they are not utilized, they turn into mediocre times, they turn into tragic times. This happens all the time. We've given classes on the subject. There are books that show when our sages or when our rabbis gave certain days, certain years for the redemption to come. And not only did the redemption not come, but they happened to be the worst year. This, for example, the Nachmanides writes, and others write, that the period of time between Passover and the holiday of Shavuot, when we received the Torah 50 days later, that has the spiritual and also Jewish law status of Chol HaMoed, of the intermediate days of a holiday. They have holiness to them. They are happy days. Unfortunately, because we did not utilize this period of time, during the days of Rabbi Akiva and his students, 24,000 students died because we did not utilize the time, and instead of, and we did various transgressions. So the best of times between Passover and Shavuot became the most tragic times. We still every year, we have many laws of mourning, MOU, right? Not mourning in the morning, but we still have many laws and limitations during this time. So also there was a very hyped Jewish community in Europe in 1648, and this was based on a verse in the Holy Zohar, Bezot Yavo Aaron. So they said, great rabbis said that in the year Zot, which is 5408, in the Gentile year 1648, this will be the time of redemption. People were preparing for it. And unfortunately, it turned into 2 years of tragic atrocities by the Polish leader Chmielewski, who killed approximately 500,000 Jews during 1648-1649. So the highest periods of the year, Yom Kippur 50 years ago, how low we fell 50 years later on Simchat Torah, we're shattered. During the afternoon reading on Yom Kippur, we read from the end in Leviticus, the end of the portion Acharei Mot. And there, we have a long list of various illegal relationships that a person is not allowed to participate. And every verse begins with the following: the nakedness of, and then it talks about what relationship. We'll give an example. The nakedness of your father and the nakedness of your mother, you shall not uncover. She is your mother, you shall not uncover her nakedness. And every verse again talks about do not uncover the nakedness of the illicit relationship. So, the Tosfot, at the end of the tractate of Megillah, page 31, he writes there, this is brought down by many commentators, that what's the idea? What in the world, if you ask me, what do you think we should read on the afternoon of Yom Kippur, where everybody's like an angel, people are fasting, people are getting along together, people are praying, people are learning? The last subject on my mind would be sexual relations, which are not permissible. That would be the last thing. Who's thinking about, these kinds of relations on the holiest day of the year? So we're asking. So the Tosfot says an amazing idea. Why do we read this? Because we're asking God, we're pleading to God, we're crying to God, please do not uncover our nakedness, our weaknesses, our vulnerabilities before the courts of God and before the Jewish people and the world. And folks, if you think about that, it's an amazing lesson, because this is the last day of Sukkot on Simchat Torah. It is even holier than Yom Kippur. And that message of God, please do not uncover our nakedness, our vulnerabilities, and we look how we did not have enough merit for that to happen. Because boy, did God reveal our nakedness and weaknesses, not only to ourselves, not only in the land of Israel, but all over the world, not only to the Jewish people, but also to the nations of the world. God revealed on this day the nakedness of the invincible, the Superman, IDF, who unfortunately many times their flag, their policy is that we are the greatest, we are invincible, no one can defeat us. And there have been leaders, so-called leaders of Israel, that have claimed that if only we had the IDF during the period of time in Europe when the Nazis eliminated the Jews, if only we had the IDF. Well, what happened if we only had the IDF? Why are there 1,300 Jews killed in one day? Right, so that is a ridiculous statement. Next, God revealed the nakedness and uncovered our weaknesses. Invincibility of our high-tech systems. I was reading a paper on how sophisticated the wall that separates us from the Gaza Strip. Unbelievable. Just reading the paper about what it does. It's really amazing. The nakedness of our leaders, both government and military, 3 days before this attack, this massacre. 3 days, folks, put on a seatbelt. The Prime Minister invited the Chief of Staff of the Army and the Chief of the Secret Service into his office, and he asked them their opinion on the Hamas 3 days before the attack. And their response was, I quote, the Hamas are down and out. They're finished. These are people, quote unquote, God forbid, these are people that are considered by many to be our guiding light, our security blanket. Chief of Staff and the Chief of the Secret Service. The Hamas is down and out. They're finished. God revealed the nakedness of our holy Sabbath and our holy holidays. A festival down south called the Festival of Nature drew approximately 3,000 people. 3,000 people on desecrating the Sabbath, desecrating the holiest day of the year, Simchat Torah. And we all know this is really eerie, but we all, on Simchat Torah, we take the Torah and we dance around the Torahs, and we dance and dance. And these poorly educated Jews, when I look at them, I really see the system that are the murderers, the spiritual murderers of these Jews, that never taught them the beauty of Torah. The beauty of Simchat Torah. There's no more beautiful day than that. And they would dance around, they danced around a idol, a statue of Buddha. Can you believe that? You could check it out yourselves if you think you can't make this stuff up. They're dancing around. This is foreign worship. This is foreign worship in the Holy Land. God revealed, what a desecration of God's name, God's people, and God's land. Drugs, alcohol. God revealed our nakedness and uncovered it to the entire world. Nakedness of our Jewish daughters at that festival, prancing around with hardly any clothes. Literally speaking, our nakedness was uncovered to the entire world. Jewish women who gave their lives for modesty, their lives. Jewish Torah that stands on modesty. The beauty of the Jewish woman is the modesty. On the holy day, in the Holy Land, dancing around with almost naked. As the brochure says, the brochure of the Festival of Nature, come for free love and free spirit. Free love, free spirit. If I'm not mistaken, the most casualties, deceased, murdered, were at this festival, 260. Even in a kibbutz, a famous kibbutz called Be'eri, where there was a really tremendous massacre, there's 100 people. 260 people were murdered. There's something that cries out to heaven. The nakedness of our daughters uncovered in Gaza as they drive them naked through the streets of Gaza, as the Arabs yell, Allah Akbar, God is great, God is great. Naked women paraded around Gaza. So folks, who is the real enemy? Foremost, us. We are the enemies. The Torah commands us to not allow non-Jews to reside in the land of Israel unless they accept upon themselves before a Jewish court the 7 commandments of Noah, accept upon themselves that they will keep a low profile, accept upon themselves they have social rights but no political rights. If not, they must go. Folks, we must put together some program to encourage, at first stage, to encourage Arabs in the land of Israel to leave, compensate them, whatever it takes. If they don't agree, then, as a last resort, to expel them from the land of Israel. Now, I think that most of Israel owes a big apology to our Rabbi Meir Kahana. A tremendous apology. He spoke about this for the last 50 and 60 years, and he was ostracized, and terrible things that was done to him. He was thrown out of the government. All is known. not only do we not encourage, expel our Arab enemies, we erase Jewish sovereignty. We erase Jewish sovereignty. How's that? Well, look how we go about doing that. Over the years, I learned in Yamit. It was given away to the Egyptians. I lived in Gaza. It was given away to the Arabs. And the list goes on and on and on. Jews expelled from settlements in northern Shomron. The list goes on till this very day. Doing a good job erasing Jewish sovereignty. PLO. PLO was established in 1964. Amazingly, it was set up, it was the beginning stages of setting it up was in the early 1960s. The official ceremony was in 1964. It was set up by none other than big Jew lovers, the KGB in Russia, and in East Germany, their secret service called, I hope I'm pronouncing it correct, Stasi. This was set up in order to destroy, the PLO was set up by the KGB, Secret Service, Russian, and the German Secret Service in order to destroy the Jewish people in the land of Israel. Okay, so that's where they start. Number two, in 1985, the PLO was expelled from Lebanon. The PLO was ostracized not only by the Western world in 1985, but by the entire Arab world. They were also financially broke. They were broke. But don't worry, to the rescue. A Jew, Shimon Peres, Shem Risha'im Yirkav, on his own initiative, against the law in Israel. It is against the law in Israel to have any contact with terror organizations. PLO is a terror organization, at least at that time. So, defying Israel law, meeting with the terrorists, Shimon Peres comes and resuscitates. If you do not believe that when the Messiah comes, the dead will come back to life, we've already seen it. It's not so hard to believe because the PLO was dead and it was revived by us. There were two party members when Shimon Peres, he finished the whole deal with the PLO, and he just brought it. He brought it to his party. There were two members in his own party who were against the agreement with the PLO terrorist organization. But no problem. What did he do? He bribed two other members of parliament from a different party, a secular national party called Somet. He bribed, you could check all of this out, he bribed two members of parliament from a different party in order to vote for the two members of his own party who were against the initiative. So the vote passed by one vote. 61 in favor, 60 against. So, since setting up in 1993, reviving the PLO, since then, if we look at the 15-year period following the Oslo agreements of 1993, there have been 1,450 Jews that were murdered. If you compare that to 15 years before the Oslo, 1993, 15 years back, there were 270 Jews that were murdered. Folks, clean your ears out to hear that. 5.5 times the rate of Jews being murdered since the agreement set up by ourselves, Shimon Peres, and the government of Israel. 5.5 times Jews were murdered in the next 15 years compared to 15 years before. Who's responsible? Have you seen 30 years later, 2023, have you seen any heads roll? No, it's corrupt. It's disgusting. We are the enemy. Hamas. Can you believe this? Israel helped create Hamas. Originally, the Hamas was called the Islamic Brotherhood. They were in Egypt. They were thrown out of Egypt. Can you believe this? They were tossed out of Egypt because they tried to assassinate the president of Egypt. His name was Nasser Jamal. They understood. Expelled from Egypt. So, no problem. We'll come into the Gaza Strip. So they come into the Gaza Strip, and then the 1967, the Six-Day War hits, and Israel liberates the Gaza Strip. So, once again, because we're the invincibles and we're Superman and we're so smart, you know how Jews are so smart. So therefore, we funded the Islamic Brotherhood, which changed their name to the Hamas. We funded many of their projects. Why? Because we're geniuses. We wanted to play off these two groups, one against the other, the PLO against the religious Hamas terrorists. So the PLO terrorists against the religious Hamas, secular against the religious. And we thought that this was such a great idea. We would just play one group off the other and they would leave us alone. Yeah, right. Anyways, the minister in Israel that was responsible for over 2 decades of the Gaza Strip, he was the minister of religious affairs. His name is Avner Cohen. After 20 years, this is what he had to say. I quote, "Hamas, to my great regret, is Israel's creation." Folks, clean out them ears. You heard it right. I'm going to read it again. Hamas, to my great regret, is Israel's creation. How many heads have rolled since creating that monster? Amazing. None. We move on. Responsibility. We are responsible. Gush Katif, Prime Minister back then, his name was Ariel Sharon. And he was elected with one of his main slogans was, the law of Nitzarim is the law of Tel Aviv. Which means Nitzarim, for those unfamiliar, was a settlement in the Gaza Strip, a Jewish settlement that has the same law as the city of Tel Aviv. He was voted in on that had to be one of his flags. But what can we expect from our righteous government politicians, government offices, all corrupt? So, in the year 2005, Sharon comes up with a plan. We will unilaterally leave the Gaza Strip, and we'll leave there the PLO terrorists. They will rule over the territories, and then we don't have to worry about the Hamas who we helped create. That was such a great idea. Now, Sharon, in order to pass this abomination, he has to bring it to his party and vote on it. So they voted on it, and he lost. No problem here in Israel, folks. You lost. You don't go home. What he did was he said, I'm going to rewrite this document of unilaterally leaving the Gaza Strip. So he made a minuscule change, and then was asked, are you now going to bring it? It was 99% the same document. Are you going to bring this before your party, the Likud, to vote on it? No, of course, was his answer. And this was passed in the Knesset by, I think, also maybe one vote, 1 or 2 votes maximum. And the rest, folks, is history. The Hamas came after the Jews were expelled in 2005. The Hamas came and expelled the PLO. And since then, in 2008, 2014, 2021, now 2023, we've been greeted with missiles, improved as the years go by. Thank God, the missiles have been updated and vastly improved. And of course, many of the shooting pads are former settlements where we got rid of the Jewish people in 2005. We are to blame. No heads are rolling in the land of Israel. Okay, this will be for the first class, and I plead with you, stay tuned for the second class. There are practical ideas at the end, so please pass this on, share it with people. This message you ain't gonna hear anywhere else. Some are coining this war the war of Simchat Torah. I would perhaps coin it the war against Torah. What do I mean? In the past 6 months, we have witnessed an astonishing onslaught against anything that smells Jewish, anything from the Torah. We've witnessed Nazi-like propaganda. We've witnessed Jewish or Erev Rav anti-Semites. A lifeguard. Once again, I have all the sources here, but I'm not giving them because of time. Lifeguard. I will not save religious people on the beach. Okay? Wife of the head of the Talmudic school in Tel Aviv called Maleliyahu is afraid to walk around the neighborhood in Tel Aviv with her head covering on. She's afraid to walk around. This is happening. This is not in Europe and not in America. This is happening here in Tel Aviv. 18 different prayer services were interrupted and stopped in Tel Aviv on the holy day of Yom Kippur. Sukkot, the holiday of the booths, various Sukkot were desecrated in various cities around Israel. Young men who come with a table and tefillin, I'm not going to try to say that word, phalan something, were threatened to be arrested for trying to have young teenagers put on the tefillin. A group of high school kids were told by the principal that they could not put on tefillin on the school grounds in Israel. A rabbi from the settlement of Eli traveled to Tel Aviv to give a class. He's a rabbi that has spoke out on the Torah prohibition of homosexual relations. You have to see the pictures. His name is Rabbi Yigal Levenstein. You could look it up. Check the pictures. There are about 200 people running after him to lynch him in Tel Aviv. You have to see the pictures. You have to see it to believe it. Almost lynched. 400,000 people, 400,000 Jews work on the Sabbath. Many of them are coerced to either work on the Sabbath or lose your job. City ordinances against desecrating Shabbat are a big joke. They are trodden upon in many, or most, or all cities. Newscaster, famous newscaster in Israel, he would like to take those tefillin strings and he would like to hang religious people, religious communities with them. Another famous newscaster in Israel spoke about the religious, what they call Haredim, called them, they are sucking our blood, something like Dracula style. Rabbinate offices in various cities in in Israel attacked. Demands for public transportation on Shabbat in many cities. Folks, this past Yom Kippur, 18 public prayers were halted by these anti-Semites. On Simchat Torah, Hashem halted all of our lives. This has gone way too far. Look at the difference in reaction. Look at, for example, the Jerusalem Post, the largest English newspaper in Israel. Also, people read it in the States. When the Jerusalem Post dealt with these 18 public prayers being interrupted, prayer books being thrown into water, pulling on prayer shawls, cursing people out, what delicate words were used by the Jerusalem Post? The protesters. Compare that to the headline. Headline, top of the page. A few days later, Jewish extremists condemned for spitting at Christians in Jerusalem. Of course, they didn't spit at Christians. They spit on the floor near a church. Now imagine this scenario. Someone's walking in front of an office of Hamas, and they're so disgusted with Hamas that they spit on the floor. That's okay. Now, fast forward the next scenario. We're in front of a church. Think about how many millions of Jews over the last 1900 years the church has murdered. Think about all the Jews that they coerced to convert. Think about all the Jews that in our times, because the Jews know nothing, they're ignorant of their Judaism, they're able to convince them to join and convert to Christianity. Think about that damage. And in disgust, somebody spits. Millions of people killed, not 1,300, millions of people in disgust. Not only that, the church also killed and also brought us to sin. Okay, last but not least, our Prime Minister Netanyahu continues to allow missionaries a free hand in Israel. They go around, many of these groups go around with his words. You got it right. There are groups that go around inciting Jews. They go to the train, they go to the central bus stations, they go to various commerce areas all over Israel, and they incite many Jews. They infuriate many Jews, but that's no problem. And they have also, in their bag of tricks, they also have their decision from the court of Israel that they are allowed to preach to us, to give us the gospel. I guess the show must go on because we need the Christian money. Who gives a damn about Jewish souls? Who gives a damn about Jewish feelings? The Christian money must continue to roll. Okay, so for today, we'll call it time out here. Please stay. I hope that in 2 or 3 days, second part will be up. Until then,